What's up, guys? Nathan Burnett, episode 82. So first things first, I am back. This is my first video since around the start of the finals. A lot's been going on, as I said in my last video, that kind of had a more sad or mellow tone, but let me just assure you all that things are going well. I'm doing a lot better. I'll give more of a update in a YouTube short or something like that so that I don't ramble on in this video, because I know y'all are ready to get into the basketball. But yes, I am starting to get back into uploading videos. Again, I put in my update that I wasn't going to stop uploading videos, just sort of taking it slow. So ironically, with it being off season, I should be uploading some more because I do have a lot of videos that I have planned. I just haven't really been as go as in the past because, again, I needed to take a break for myself. But again, things are doing a lot better. Just wanted to get that out of the way for anybody that was curious or worried about me. And let's go ahead and get into the basketball. So first off, I want to start off with the finals and the playoffs. So let's talk about that. So I know that a big debate is going to be the referees and free throws, but I want to just start off by saying that OKC won, and there's nothing that we can do to take away from them. If I also go back to my Twitter, if y'all haven't follow me on Twitter, go follow me there. Or it's called X now, but nobody calls it X. I'm always just going to call it Twitter. So, but I put out a tweet as soon as the OKC Thunder won, and I'm going to read it as follows because this really gives a pretense as to my takes. So I said, yes, I was going for the Pacers. Yes, it could have been a generational run on the levels of Dirk. Yes, Haliburton got injured. Yes, officiating was bad at times. But even with all of my opinions on that, don't take away this win from OKC. Good games all around. Officiating was bad for both sides. Injuries happen in every playoff run. OKC was a defensive monster. Pacers had terrible turnovers and have won without Hallie before. Either way, we were going to see history made. Didn't go the way that I wanted, but that's sports, and you have to take it as it comes. So congrats to Oklahoma City on your first championship and making history in your city. And that basically summarizes my takes. There's a lot that went on in this playoffs and in the finals, but at the end of the day, OKC won, and we have to live with it, right? And here in a little bit later in this episode, I'm going to go into how I think it's important to respect both teams. And I'll go more into detail on that later. But as I said, officiating was bad on both sides. There are numerous quotes from different coaches that say no matter how bad officiating is, you have to be able to out-coach and outperform bad officiating. Even if we go back to, I made a video on the New York Rens back when African American players were first being able to play basketball, and there's a quote even from the players that far back that said that they had to start the game with a 15-point lead, and that was because had they not done that, that 15 points was the 15 that they were going to give to the other team for free. And so bad officiating, things like that, bias has always existed in sports. Definitely not to that level that I'm pulling the quote from, because obviously that had a lot more to deal with race and racial tensions and a civil unrest. I'm not comparing the two, but I am making the observation that things like this have always existed. And even back then, they said if you are worried about bad officiating, then it's your job to get a big enough lead to where it cancels out, right? So again, no matter how bad officiating is, you have to outperform the bad officiating. And yes, like it makes it more difficult because if the other team just gets like, let's say an absurd number, like 50 free throws, yes, it's going to be difficult for you to make up 50 extra points. But again, sometimes that's just how sports is. And there are exceptions like Donahue, sorry. There are exceptions to that where it's just blatantly like out of your control and they are fixing games. And there are exceptions to that. But general consensus, you have to be good enough, or you have to have the mental fortitude to know that you are good enough to outperform the bad officiating and then go out there and do it, right? And there's a lot of controversy around Scott Foster, because Scott Foster, I just mentioned Donahue. Scott Foster was like tangentially involved in that, so a lot of people think that Scott Foster should also be suspended. His nickname is literally the Extender because he's known for extending series. And so a lot went on with Game 4 and other games of the finals where we could have not even gotten to Game 7 had we not had Scott Foster and other refs there. But again, at the end of the day, that's how the cookie crumbles, right? And I pointed out other things in my tweet that said that you can't just explicitly blame the Pacers losing on Haliburton's injury or on free throws. And a lot of people are going to hate on that because there's a lot of division right now in the basketball community with that. A lot of people are saying you don't know ball if you say that teams lost to free throws, and other people are saying you don't know ball if you don't know ball if you think teams lost to free throws, and you don't know ball if you don't think teams lost to free throws, and so on. There's a lot of division there. And I wanted to come on and say that I see both sides, because I do agree with the argument that people often rebuttal the free throw number by saying like, oh, well, like even if OKC got less free throws, or say like OKC got one more free throw than the other team, a lot of OKC fans or other people will rebuttal and kind of be like, well, it was 15 free throws to 14. It's only one number more. Like, why are you complaining? And the rebuttal to that is that it's not necessarily the number of free throws. It's when they occur, because it changes a lot of momentum, and it can take a while to get back sort of in the groove. Like if the Pacers are on a 10-0 run or something like that, or not the Pacers, just any team. If the Pacers are on a 10-0 run, right, for example, and then all of a sudden someone on OKC or whatever team they're facing gets a free foul call, that's essentially, it's less about the free throws and it's more like a free timeout, right? When the other team is going on a run, you take a timeout, and the purpose of that timeout is to stop the momentum. And whenever the other team gets a foul call on something like that, again, it's essentially a free timeout where they're stopping the play, they're stopping the momentum, and now the other team that didn't get the free throw, they have to build that momentum back up. And it can sort of sway the way the game is going, not necessarily because of the free throws themselves, but again, you're changing the course of the game, you're changing the pace. And I think that with that, a lot of people, refs have more control than people realize. And I've made a video before saying that I don't think it's smart to always criticize the refs because, one, again, refs have more control. It's kind of goes both ways. Refs have more control and less control than people think. people think that the refs have so much control in areas that refs don't have control over, and they think that refs don't have control in a lot of ways that refs do have control. It's sort of this weird paradoxical thinking. But I also, in that video, did a lot of research and sort of documented and everything that whenever we criticize refs, refs get worse. And so, yes, it's important to call things out, but the more we comment on it, again, it's a weird paradoxical thing that it's only going to get worse the more we comment on it. And so we sort of have to, as hard as it is to say, have to take a step back and let the NBA handle it on its own. And unfortunately, the NBA has not done a good job of handling that. And I do agree they need to get better at that. There needs to be fines for refs, things like that. But the more we complain about it, it's just going to get so much worse. And I'll talk about that a bit more whenever I talk about the whole respect thing, because it's going to go into social media and things like that. But among other reasons that the Pacers and other teams lost, besides just free throws, again, I said that the free throws can change momentum, so that's a point to one side where free throws affect the game. But a point to the other side is that the Pacers were just fucking abysmal in certain aspects of the game. In the second half of Game 7, and this has a lot to do with Haliburton's injury, which I'll also comment on, they had something like 20 turnovers just in the second half alone. It was bad. And obviously, again, a big reason for that was the demoralization caused by Haliburton's injury. But that wasn't just in Game 7 when Haliburton was injured either. The Pacers had really bad turnovers throughout this entire series. And that has a lot to do with OKC's defense. The Pacers were making so many like silly mistakes, silly errors, and things like that, or just making bad passes, passing the ball out of bounds, things like that just caused turnovers that, again, even with the free throws changing momentum, obviously that's going to change momentum as well when you throw the ball out of bounds, because, again, you're essentially stopping the clock for the other team, and you're also giving them the ball back as well, obviously. And so that caused OKC and other teams to go on these big runs, because they would just have turnover after turnover after turnover. And so after you have 4 turnovers in a row, let's say each one is a 2-pointer, then that's an 8-0 run for the other team. And that just kept happening, especially, again, Game 7. With Game 7, I think Haliburton's injury had more impact than him just being injured and his point output, because a lot of people obviously make the point that if Haliburton was healthy, the Pacers could have won that game. And I wholeheartedly agree, but I don't think it's just because of him being injured. I think it also has to deal with sort of the morality of the team as well. And even the commentators commented on it with Siakam, where Siakam was screaming in the team huddles, trying to tell them, like, we're still in this. We need to keep going. And that's sort of the mentality that needed to be had on the team, was that even with Haliburton out, they could have still won that game. But as time went on, they seemed like they were just giving up more and more. And again, in the third quarter, second half, they were, again, making really, really simple mistakes. They've turned the ball over so much. And they even said in the interview afterwards that it was really tough on them because of the emotional state that they were in with Haliburton's injury. And so I think that points to why they had such an awful second half. But had they been able to sort of rally themselves, had they had more leadership without Haliburton, and more leadership in Siakam or someone else, or leadership in their coach, they could have been able to sort of rally together and say like, hey, we can still win this without Haliburton. Let's honor the effort that he's put into this, and win it for him. But as time went on, they seemed like they were just giving up more and more, especially after all the turnovers in the third quarter, and the Thunder just went up by 20. At that point, the game was essentially over because the Pacers just sort of tapped out and just letting OKC get points, run out the clock, and so on. And so that's sort of a point to each side. So we're kind of tied 2-2 with OKC being handed the win, and also the Pacers having their issues. I think I'll touch on this again later with social media, but there's been so many finals recently that have had asterisks next to it that it's just kind of it's kind of annoying to a point where, again, I think as a basketball fan, you just have to give the winners the win. And there are extreme circumstances where, yes, you can call things out, but again, at the end of the day, OKC won. We have to honor that. And I'll touch a bit more on that later with the whole respect aspect. But the Pacers, again, definitely could have played better. They could have won with Haliburton injured, had they not been demoralized. The refs were bad in a lot of different games for both sides. I don't think the calls were just in OKC's favor. There were some ref calls that were in other teams' favor, but I think the calls do just need to be even, because I know that was an issue with the Nuggets series and other series where Shai would get a call for something, and on the opposite end, Jokic would have the exact same contact and not get the call. So, again, there's just sort of that aspect where the refs need to, if they're going to be bad, they need to at least be equally bad for both teams. And there's a lot that goes into that, but I do think that this run will be remembered by actual basketball fans. With the Pacers, because the same thing is true with Reggie Miller and the Pacers. Obviously, it's sort of for a different reason, but Reggie Miller does not have a ring, obviously, and a huge reason for that is because of the what if surrounding his year and the Malice at the Palace, all that stuff. And people truly believe that he is a player that should have a ring, but just doesn't due to circumstances. And it's kind of ironic that it's the Pacers, the same team that this is occurring to, where there's this massive what if surrounding it again, where what if Haliburton hadn't gotten injured? They could have had a ring, all that stuff. And I think that this run is going to be remembered because, once again, it was a really sweet, it was a really good Sweet 16 Cinderella type story where, had they won, I truly believe that this championship could have been on the level of like almost a Dirk Nowitzki level championship. Obviously, Dirk had to go up against like prime LeBron and these other teams. So not necessarily Dirk level, but I think it's like almost there. So I do think even if Haliburton doesn't get the actual ring, if this Pacers team doesn't hoist the championship trophy up, I do think that this run will go down in their legacy and be remembered. And so it kind of hurts them if 30 years from now people are arguing resumes, because they'll be like, oh, Shai has a championship and Haliburton doesn't, or even with old OKC players like KD and Westbrook never won a ring with OKC, and Shai did, and so on and so on. But again, you have to always look at context in those types of arguments. That's why I always try and provide context with MJ versus LeBron arguments and things like that. Context matters so much behind what's just on paper. I say paper, even though everything's pretty much online now, but you know what I mean. Looking at a list of accomplishments or a list of stats will always be different than the actual context behind it. And so that is what I always try and do here on this channel, is provide context for you guys, and then you guys can come up with your own takes or things like that from the context that I provide or others provide. And so for me, I think that OKC, they played really well, and I'm honestly, there's two ways to look at this. We can either be scared for the NBA's future because a lot of people think that this sets a precedent that that free throws and flopping can win you championships. And I do think that, again, there is some caution to that. There's sort of a thin line there, as I described, but I don't think that this championship was won exclusively off flopping. I think it's important to think that this helps establish another precedent that I personally love to see, and that is that defense wins championships. That has been the thing that has been talked about so much with this OKC team, is that, OKC fans have been, honestly, and I say this lightheartedly as a joke, but OKC fans have been annoyingly vocal about this, that they have said, quote, time and time again, that they have a smothering defense. They have a smothering defense and all of that. And there's some truth to that. I personally would have liked to see Caruso get some more recognition because of that, because I think that it helps. I really want that precedent to be set once again, as it did in the early 2000s and the 2010s, that defense wins championships, because I love seeing defense in basketball over simple throw contest, because that was something that happened in this playoffs as well. It was a lot of 3-point play, and it was just sad at times. Like even in Game 6 of the playoffs, I know that a lot of people will make the argument that OKC was losing on purpose in order to win it at home Game 7, but the commentators talked about it was the least amount of points coming out of a half. Let me see. I wrote it down here. What did the commentators say? It was like the biggest deficit in a half or something like that. Here it is. Quote, most time with no points in a second half in playoff history. And that was during a finals series. And I saw players that no matter how much they got to the free throw line, like others argue about, players were bricking free throws. They were hoisting up threes that didn't go in. But I did like to see that both Shai and OKC and Haliburton with the Pacers, especially TJ McConnell, played a lot more in the paint, which was really exciting. Obviously, Jalen Brunson and other players play really well in the paint as well. So I'm excited to see more of that mid-range and that cutting through the key play to come back, rather than just the Celtics and Cavs 3-point shot making contest. That's really exciting for me, because I hate just seeing constant lobs over and over and over. I want to see strategic basketball. And TJ McConnell, man, he really showed that. He was always cutting through the paint. He was finishing through like 3 defenders on almost every single play. And he almost carried them to a win through Game 7. It really sucks that a lot of the games that he did really well, like Game 7, Game 4, etc., that they lost because, as many have said, it would have been a generational game. I saw a lot of people commenting about that, saying, like, we wasted a TJ McConnell legacy game and things like that. So he played really well, and that's disheartening because, again, they didn't win the championships. That may mean that TJ McConnell gets traded or doesn't get re-signed or whatever the case is, because he's getting older. But I do really like the way that he played, and I do think that he's a really solid role player, and adds depth to the bench, and things like that. So TJ McConnell played really well. But back to the original point, OKC, they, again, had really good defense throughout this whole regular season, throughout the whole playoffs. And I really hope that sets a precedent at, like the previous decades, that defense wins championships, because I really would like to see that come back. We already saw that a little bit with the Cavs and a little bit with the Spurs, where Evan Mobley won Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously, Wemby would have won it had he not gotten injured, and that's not just me with bias as a Spurs fan. I feel like 90% of the NBA can agree with that. But I have been high on Evan Mobley's defense and the Cavs' defense for several years. If you go back to a video a few years ago, I even predicted that Evan Mobley would win Defensive Player of the Year in 3 years. That was before Wemby came into the league. But then we have the Spurs as well, where they have Sohan, they have Wemby. They're starting to try and build a defensive monster as well. And I really love to see that. I would love to see the NBA come full circle and have sort of these defensive powerhouses again, because to me that's more entertaining, again, than just constant like 200-point games or whatever the case is like that. So obviously I'm exaggerating with the 200-point games, but it's to make a point. I would much rather see the low scoring, like 98 to 100 games than 148 to 150. So I really hope that OKC helps set that precedent with this championship, and I think they will, because as a lot of people have said, this may be the start to another dynasty where OKC has so many draft picks coming out of this. They do have the second apron to worry about, so they will have to start paying players more or less, or do some salary manipulation, things like that. But they did well in the draft last night. They're going to lose a few players. Like, I think people were saying they're going to lose Hartenstein probably, but they drafted his replacement last night. So I think OKC has a team for a while. And again, a lot of people are going to hate on that because of their controversy around them, but I am excited to see this defensive team go. I'm excited for what the Spurs are capable of with their defensive team. When Wemby's healthy, I think they can put up a fight against this OKC team. And then we'll have sort of a Texas-OKC rivalry going on again, which will be fun. But with all that said, OKC, congratulations on your championship. And again, I wanted to go into the whole respect thing. So there's been a lot of division, not just in sports, but sort of in the world. And I think it's important to respect both sides of whatever issue you're on. And I'm not going to go, this is not like a whole political rant, but I'm just saying, even those of y'all that are younger and have been on YouTube for a while, some of y'all older people that may watch me and are more concerned with the basketball, y'all may not know the YouTube space as much as the basketball space, but some of y'all younger people, y'all may know Markiplier, and he did a whole video and ramble on this as well, where respect needs to sort of come back into the world. And with social media, that has sort of disintegrated in a way where, again, every championship in the last, let's say, 10 years has had an asterisk on it, especially the bubble championship and especially this championship. There is even a YouTuber, which I do not remember his name, so forgive me. Whenever I'm editing, I will put it on the screen here. But he did a video specifically for that, where it was putting an asterisk on every NBA championship of all time. And theoretically, you can go through and say, like, well, they only won because of this to every single championship, or make a what if to every single championship. Because that's just what sports fans do, right? Like 2021, if KD's foot was just a little bit smaller, or if his foot was behind the line, the Bucks wouldn't have continued into their championship. Things like that. But social media has made it so prevalent because it is so easy to sort of find that confirmation bias, as has been said and debated for so long. And it's also, as many have pointed out, also gives a soapbox to every single person that wants it. And I'm not exempt from this, because I'm a guy that makes YouTube videos on basketball as my hobby. So the same can be easily said for me, that I just bought a mic, bought a camera, bought a ring light, all that stuff, hooked it up to my PC, and now I'm just recording my takes for whatever void wants to listen to it. And that's true, but the same can be said so much about NBA Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, where anytime a team wins, loses, the refs do bad, or whatever the case is, so many people will be up in arms about whatever the case is. And I think it's important to respect each other, because obviously there's a lot of friendly competition that goes around in the sport. I'm not denying that, because I had OKC fans. I had friends who are OKC fans, and we were constantly like rage baiting each other during the finals about OKC versus the Pacers and things like that. I'm not saying you can't have friendly competition, but what I'm more so referring to is the extremist side of it, where, again, you lose any form of respect. And again, I think that a lot of it comes from these younger fans and the younger generation that were born into social media, because again, the maturity level of some of the things that are said, you can sort of tell that it's the younger fans. I've seen edits. Someone made a video where it was the video of Haliburton holding his ACL in Game 7, and they put the circus music over it, like the da 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 da. Like, that's just not right. And that's laughing at someone's injury. I saw another one where they put like a fat AI filter on Haliburton, so they made him like a big chubby dude, like how they did to Zion a few years back. There's obviously I'm sure y'all have seen this one going around, where it's Haliburton doing the choking symbol, and they put like the eggplant in his mouth and things like that. It's just, there needs to be a maturity level when it comes to the competition, especially with his injury and things like that. And I've seen people say that that Shai is the greatest player to ever play on the Thunder. And again, I think that comes from a younger generation, because they aren't respecting KD, Russell, and Harden. If you're talking in terms of OKC accomplishments, yes, that argument can be made. But if you're saying just all-time players that have played for OKC, then I do put KD and Westbrook obviously above Shai, because Westbrook averaged a triple-double. KD obviously has some championships of his own and is going to be a Hall of Fame player, as much as I hate KD and things like that. But the people that I've talked to that are sort of older or not as obsessed with sort of the cesspool of that attitude around the championship have been very respectful. Again, my friends that are OKC fans, they said that even they cried at Haliburton's injury, or they do not feel any happiness around it. They know that this championship, as much as it's great to have the first championship with their city, they're upset that it will kind of be tainted with injury now. Things like that. They wish him a speedy recovery. And even Shai himself, as much as people hate on Shai's style of play with free throws and flopping, Shai went and checked on Haliburton in the Pacers locker room to kind of see if he was okay, not just physically, but emotionally with his team losing and things like that. And that shows a big sportsmanship thing. And I think that's what I'm kind of circling around to, is that you can have competition while still having sportsmanship. And I think that so many people, especially the younger generation, have tipped that edge, tipped that line too far, where they have so much competition where they have lost all sake of sportsmanship. And there are several franchises that do it. Obviously, Philly has been known for this with all of their sports. And there are franchises that simply just do not like each other, which is fair. You can have, you have Ohio and I believe it's Michigan. Ohio and Michigan hate each other. And then you have like UT and A&M. You have the Eagles versus the Cowboys, and just things like that. You can have like rivalries, but again, it's just human decency to have sportsmanship, and I feel that has very much been lost. And that is sort of my my TED Talk, I guess you could say, my lesson to you guys. I know it's sort of a philosophical rant and everything, but again, being in the basketball space, being in the social media space, it's something that I noticed, and I wanted to call it out for people that follow me, and sort of use the platform that I've been given to sort of rein in positivity and things like that, rather than continuing the trend of saying like OKC didn't deserve their championship, or yada yada. I think it's important to have sportsmanship on either side. So I respect OKC for their win, congratulate them on their win. They made history for their city, but I expect that same respect and sportsmanship in return, rather than saying that Indiana choked, Haliburton deserves to get injured, things like that. There needs to be like a GG's sort of on either side. And I think that's been lost, and a lot of that again has to deal with just the access to to community with social media and things of that nature. And that opens up a huge can of worms for us to talk about. Maybe we talk about it in the future on like an off-season episode or something about social media and how it just opens the gates to criticism. But yeah, how long have I been recording? I was going to talk about drafts and some trades, but I think depending on how long I've been recording, I may save that for next episode, just so that I can have some more stuff to record about, with this being now technically the off season. So let me check my timestamp up here to see how long I've been recording. All right, I've been recording for about 40 to 45 minutes. I usually go for an hour, but I think I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here, guys. And then next episode, I will talk about draft reactions, trades, all that good stuff, because I want to give sort of researched and well thought out takes and things like that for you guys. So I don't want to just talk about the draft and trades and stuff like that right now, because with me just rambling about OKC, the draft and stuff isn't really on the top of my mind. So I want to kind of refresh myself. I know Ace Bailey is going to be probably my main talking point in that video. But yeah, I should be coming out with another episode here soon, and I'll talk about the drafts and the trades and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here with OKC stuff, and then next episode we'll talk drafts and trades. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I am happy to be back recording stuff for you guys, and I will get back into the swing of releasing videos and all that good stuff. I will actually leave a comment down below as to what my future videos are to get you guys excited. So with all that said, I hope y'all enjoyed. Check out the links in the description to my indie game, my Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Subscribe, share the video around, and I hope y'all enjoyed. So Nathan Burnett, episode 82. Peace out.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.